Picture planting more than 300 gorgeous tulips in your front lawn, a splash of color to brighten the whole neighborhood. Sounds ideal, doesn't it? But what if that innocent gardening gesture unleashed a ferocious fight with your own homeowners association? What if a splashy decision set you back several $100s in fines and forced you to retaliate in a way no one anticipated? Stick with me. This is a tale of flowers, but actually it's about standing up for yourself, imagination, and an unexpected neighborhood scandal that materialized one petal at a time. Let's rewind and begin at the start then. Think you reside in a tranquil suburban enclave, tidy lawns, uniform fences, synchronized mailboxes, and the sort of serenity most desire. It's the type of community where everyone says hello, where neighborhood barbecues are de rigueur, and where the biggest commotion is whether or not someone forgot to take in their trash cans on time. But beneath that placid surface exists a system, the HOA, or Homeowners Association. If you've ever lived in a neighborhood with an HOA, you already get it. They make the rules. They guard the property values. They manicure the grass, the colors, and the whole community to look clean and uniform. At least that's the theory. But now and then, the rules that are supposed to guard order can start to feel a little too restrictive. And that's where this story is starting. One woman, a neighborhood regular, made up her mind one spring that she wanted to create something special, something cheerful, something bright. She did not aim to make a point or start a revolution. She simply wanted her front yard to be full of life and color following a long, drab winter. So she planted tulips. Not 20, not 10, but more than 300 tulip bulbs, a combination of yellow and pink. Clusters and rows of gorgeous, colorful petals flowering alongside each other, forming a real rainbow on her lawn. And it was lovely. Passers-by stopped to enjoy the hues. Some even snapped pictures. Her lawn was the buzz of the neighborhood, and not negatively, for a few weeks. It put smiles on faces. It brightened moods. It brought an extra something to the block. Yet not everyone was delighted, because buried deep within the HOA rules was something referred to as the Uniform Flowerbed Color Policy, a dictate that stated that all flower beds should have one uniform single-color scheme in order to keep visual cohesion throughout the neighborhood. That's right. Here, combining colors wasn't a bold move. It was an infraction. Now you may be saying, come on, it's only flowers. But to the HOA, rules are rules. And when her front yard began bursting into yellow and pink, it didn't matter how gorgeous it was or how many people complimented her on it. What mattered is that she had disrupted the uniformity. She had planted outside of the lines. She had brought in not one but two colors. A few days after, she got a notice. The letter was official, as HOA letters always are. It informed her that she was out of compliance with the policy on flowerbed color and that she would be fined. $50 per offending color, not per bed, not per flower, but per offending color that was out of compliance. $50 for the yellow ones, $50 for the pink ones, $100 total for what for many was an act of simple joy and imagination. Now let's take a moment here. Consider that. Picture planting something on your own property with your own hands because you wanted to brighten your neighborhood, only to be informed that your work was unwanted against the ordinance and deserving of a penalty. It brings up a significant question. How much authority should an HOA truly exert over personal expression? Is the pursuit of uniformity more vital than enabling homeowners to put their own stamp on their homes? This moment, this letter, is where the story really begins to bloom. Because instead of backing down, instead of paying the fine and pulling out her flowers, the woman did something unexpected. But we'll get to that later. Right now, let's explore how this small choice, planting a mix of tulips, turned into a much larger conversation about community, conformity, and the blurry lines between maintaining beauty and enforcing control. Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack the policies, the personalities, and the petals that turned a front yard into a battleground for individual rights. This is the tale of too many tulips, or maybe just the right amount. And what ensued when a woman chose that her garden did not have to be governed by the rules to be lovely. So, strap in. This isn't so much about flowers. This is about freedom, This is about the strength of choice, and it's about what occurs when a seemingly minor act of hue defies the gray lines of command. Let's proceed. When that woman got that letter from the HOA, it wasn't merely a sheet of paper. It was a blunt message telling her that the neighborhood had regulations, and they weren't to be trifled with. The uniform flowerbed color policy was not only a suggestion, it was an instrument of enforcement meant to maintain neighborhood visual cohesiveness. And cohesiveness, in the HOA's opinion, equated to beauty, harmony, and increased property values. You may wonder why such a policy is in place at all. At face value, it seems silly. Why would the colors of flowers be an issue? But HOAs are established with the thinking that having an overall look allows for a degree of aesthetic value on every house, which preserves everyone's investment. They figure that if some lawn suddenly does become an oddity with an out-of-this-world color palette, it may upset the sense of balance and could reduce the appeal of the neighborhood. So when she planted the yellow and pink tulips alongside each other, she inadvertently destroyed that harmony. Two colors were two violations, as far as the HOA was concerned, and two violations meant fines. The letter detailed that she was charged $50 per color, therefore $50 for yellow tulips and $50 for the pinks. In total, $100, a sizable amount, particularly when it's for something as harmless as putting up plants. But beyond the fine itself, the letter instructed her to act at once. She was told to delete one of the colors, to restore the uniformity of her bed of flowers. The message was unmistakable. Keep your flowers in line or expect continuing fines. Now imagine how that felt. You've spent your own money and effort beautifying your yard, something you take pride in, only to be told you're wrong for adding a splash of color. And not only that, you're being fined for it. This is where the war between individuality and communal control breaks down to personal and tangible. The HOA, as it policed its rules, considered itself the protector of the neighborhood's order. The homeowner, meanwhile, felt stifled and disproportionately targeted. And it wasn't even a personal matter. Soon enough, it became a symbol for many residents who quietly questioned the extent of the HOA's control over their lives. A few neighbors murmured in agreement, indicating that she should be allowed to grow whatever she pleased. Others felt the regulations were needed and that not abiding by them would result in anarchy, yards full of clashing hues and a decline in neighborhood standards. The woman herself was not looking to make waves. She had merely desired a bright garden to bring some joy into her house. But now she was in conflict with the very community that was supposed to look out for her own interests. The HOA's strict and no-nonsense enforcement of the color policy brought to light how rules, when applied strictly, can occasionally run at odds with self-expression. This instance also gave rise to questions regarding the justice and adaptability of HOA regulations. Are they designed to safeguard the community, or do they sometimes cross the line into being too controlling? This was no longer just about tulips. It was about where the line should be drawn between community expectations and personal freedoms. And so, rather than pay the fines and take down one of the colors, the woman started to think about what she would do next. Would she comply with the HOA's decision? Or would she manage to fight for her garden and for the color she brought to her house? As we proceed, you'll get to know what happened and how a homeowner chose to react not with silence, but with courage. As word of the fine and flowerbed controversy began to get around, it didn't remain silent for long. What had started as a local battle between a single homeowner and the HOA quickly became a community discussion. Friends and neighbors began taking sides. Some were in favor of the HOA's ruling. They felt that the regulations were explicit and had to be enforced. They feared that if one individual got to circumvent the color policy, others would begin to disregard it, and soon the meticulously devised uniform appearance of the neighborhood would be lost. To these neighbors, the HOA was a guardian, a necessary keeper of order that made the community handsome and kept property values up. "Got it," one of the neighbors replied. "We all had our rules when we purchased our properties. If everyone just did what they wanted, it would be ugly. It's about keeping the neighborhood attractive to all of us." But standing against them were the advocates of the woman and her tulips. To them, the fine was vindictive, an abuse of power that penalized imagination and self-expression. The vibrant tulips, to them, represented individuality, which should be encouraged and not stifled. "I think it's absurd," another neighbor countered. "She's beautifying the neighborhood. How can two hues be an issue? It's her lawn. She should be able to put whatever she wishes in there." Social media also became a platform for the debate. A few neighbors shared photos of the tulips online, sparking conversations far beyond the block. Some praised the woman for her courage, calling her a breath of fresh air in a sea of conformity. Others defended the HOA, arguing that rules exist for a reason and should be respected. This division of opinion revealed how complex such neighborhood regulations can be. What is a matter of straightforward gardening can easily turn into a metaphor for larger things, about control, liberty, and the ability to determine your own home environment. The argument was no longer about flowers. It was now about community values and the extent to which an HOA could control its residents. While she watched all this, the woman caught herself thinking about how a simple choice had grown into something much bigger than she had ever envisioned. Something she had done on a personal level had become the point of conversation regarding fairness, creativity, and respect. Some neighbors even reached out to her, expressing support and encouragement. They admired her decision to stand up for what she believed was right, even in the face of fines and warnings. Others remained silent, unsure which side to take, but watching closely to see how the situation would develop. The HOA, too, faced its own pressures. It had to enforce its policies to maintain credibility, but it also had to consider the growing attention and divided opinions among residents. This conflict highlighted a classic tension in many communities: the balance between maintaining order and allowing personal freedom. It left people wondering where to draw the line. Should homeowners associations have rigid control over every aspect of our houses and lawns? Or should there be space for creativity and a little color outside the lines? As onlookers watched, the woman already had her next move planned, a reaction that would astound everyone and put additional pressure on the HOA's position. Her tale serves as a reminder that, at times, defending a mere act of beauty can swell into something far greater, a movement about who we are and how we live together. Having accepted the fine and the mixed opinions from her neighbors, the woman was in a dilemma. Should she just acquiesce, take away one of the tulip colors, and pay fines? Or should she resist in a manner that made a point about her rights, her creative freedom, and her passion for gardening? She opted for the latter. The next year, she shocked everyone. Not with additional yellow or pink tulips, but with something different altogether: black tulips. Yes, black tulips, a weird and dramatic choice to plant in any garden. Now, black tulips aren't merely uncommon, they're brazen, they're enigmatic, and they don't so much fit into the classic pastel and vibrant hues of most gardens. By planting these dark, dramatic tulips, she wasn't simply putting color in the ground. She was making a statement. She was saying, "I will plant what I want. I will express myself on my property, and I won't be bound by archaic or too constraining rules." The black tulips stood out beautifully against the green grass, and soon everyone was talking about them. Some neighbors were shocked. Others envied the bravery of going up against the HOA in such a public manner. Her reaction wasn't protest, it was art. It was a reminder that gardens, like any kind of expression, can be personal and individual. The HOA, however, was not pleased. They viewed the black tulips as another violation. After all, the Uniform Flowerbed Color Policy didn't mention anything about black tulips specifically, but it did require consistency and approval for any changes. They sent another notice, again reminding her of the rules and the potential consequences if she didn't comply. But this time, the woman was prepared. Rather than backing down, she contacted the HOA, neighbors, and even local press. She explained her side, that her garden was her haven, an oasis of beauty and freedom, and that rules could not possibly encroach on that fundamental right. Her tale spoke to many individuals outside the community. It was used as a metaphor for resisting the powers that be when they seem unjust, for opting for imagination over conformity, and for taking space for one's own expression. The black tulips also poked their proud faces into her garden every year afterward, reminding everyone of her strength and dedication. Her action caused others to reconsider strict HOA regulations and to pose serious questions. What constitutes community? How do we find harmony between rules and individuality? And how can neighborhoods celebrate diversity, even for as mundane a thing as flower colors? Ultimately, her garden was more than a stunning showcase of tulips. It was a tale of courage, of transformation, and of the strength it takes to stand up for what you believe in.